attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. It's 1 o'clock right now, but I see a few others are just joining the room. So we're going to give about 15 seconds for everybody to get situated, and we'll get started here soon. Okay, great. So hello and welcome everyone to the iForm Builder 101 training, The Art of Form Building. We all know that form building is the foundation for really leveraging iForm Builder at its core. So today we're going to be diving into the truly the art of form building, the best practices, the actual form builder, and we're going to be going through a few of the widgets as well as how you can configure the forms to really meet your your business needs. So with that said, my name is Ryan Coleman. I'll be monitoring the training today. If you have any questions throughout this session, please use the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar sidebar. There's a questions and chat feature. Ask your questions. We'll either field them in line or we'll be stopping in here and there. And if it's something that's very specific to your workflow, we can follow up after the training and address that right then and there. Joining me today is our facilitator, Barrett Johannesson. Barrett's a solutions engineer here at iForm Builder and is really driving a lot of the training initiatives internally. Before we jump in here and get started, I'd like to just cover a few of the news and updates. We have a lot of new faces on today's session, as well as some, long-term existing customers, but it's always helpful to really know exactly where we're headed. So with that said, over the past 2 months, iForm Builder's development team has been really focused on really revamping and improving the Android release. So you're going to be seeing a lot of new features popping into Android. A lot of that is going to be driven by mapping features. So you're going to have the map view. You're also going to be having the manage view that some of our iOS users are accustomed to. You're going to be seeing different types of elements and widgets actually get enhanced as well. We've integrated with Manatee Works, which allows you to use the device camera as a barcode scanner. Manatee is actually phenomenal. We've been using it for quite some time here on the iOS side, but it recognizes up to 14 different types of barcodes. You get to dictate which ones you want it to look for or leave it open. Again, a really dynamic and a pretty awesome addition to the platform. A lot of new changes in the Android ecosystem has also come as a result of the requests of the community. So please use those forms on the knowledge base to get the most out of it. We also just returned 2 weeks ago from the Esri user conference in San Diego. And we got bombarded with a lot of really great feedback, a lot of interest in iForm Builder and what we've done in terms of being able to integrate with the Esri system, or the ArcGIS and the products, or the suite of products around Esri. And for those of you who haven't seen all of the different announcements and emails that are going out, Esri is, they are the foundation in terms of mapping services for enterprise customers. So basically all GIS components, we had a lot of customers that were leveraging iForm Builder and doing a ton of post-processing on their data to get it prepared to go into Esri. What we've done is eliminated that, and we have a few features that or actually a few integrations that we were able to really leverage. One is to have iForm Builder and ArcGIS Online, allow for bidirectional data to be shared and transferred. We have an integration with Collector, which is the Esri app, mobile app that allows for iForm Builder to add that more robust advanced form building features. You're also we've created a tool set that allows you to take data collected in the field and import it into your ArcGIS for server. So between the three of those, there's a whole plethora of different types of workflows that can be put together, and some really unique scenarios are created. One of the big things that I wanted to bring to the attention of everybody on today's call is what it means when we say hardware and software integration. So with hardware and software integration, iForm Builder has taken a lot of time, and it really separates us from the rest of the marketplace in terms of selecting best of breed software and hardware solutions to truly integrate with. So if you need to have offline mobile printing, well, Zebra printers, best of breed, you're able to print to a Zebra printer directly from your device. We've also integrated with infinite peripherals and socket scanners. We also have a lot of our engineering and GIS community loves hearing about the GPS radios that we've integrated with. So there's XX Blue for more of a commercial grade device, as well as dual X GPS 150. So there's a lot of things happening there. And I'm going to be dropping a link here in the chat window, and it's going to cover all of our different types of integration that we've I guess all the different types of hardware that we've integrated with over the years. And then finally, as a result of a lot of requests from the community as well, we've taken the time and really put together some support options and support plans to allow for the iForm Builder customers to really rely on us as mobile experts, as well as platform experts, to expedite and also improve the way that the platform is being used. So you're going to be seeing a lot more information coming out here in August. And then finally, in terms of actual training courses and training classes, what we're going to be doing here today is going to be a higher level, more generic delivery in terms of actual training course. But if it's something that you want to have, capacity being built internally, more form builders becoming available, if there's multiple projects across multiple continents, whatever it might be, ping us an email and we'll figure out a way that we can, help you grow your team as well. And with that, I want to jump in. We start every training with a foundational model called SAMR. Now, SAMR comes from the educational background, and it stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. However, once we align this with pretty much every deployment of iForm Builder or successful deployment of iForm Builder, we really see where customers are able to get the most out of the platform. So at the very low end, if you have a paper form, you're going to substitute that paper form into iForm Builder on your mobile device. Very low level, but at the same time, you're able to collect the data. It's all in the same location. Now, as soon as you start to augment that form, you're able to standardize the form or the drop-down list, and you're able to add calculations directly on the device. You're able to auto-populate certain bits of information onto the form. You're now augmenting that. It's increasing the value as well as the productivity of your team. Now, what we really want to focus on is the actual integration after you collect the data. What are you going to do with it? And what we were finding is that you're able to, by leveraging the API as well as the data feeds and the post-JSON and post-XML functionality built into iForm Builder, it's where you're really able to modify that paper form being filed and put away for however long until somebody else goes and fishes it out. It's all about putting your data to use. So as soon as you build your form, you now add all those cool features or some different types of validation messages or skip logic into the form. Now, what are you going to do with that? Is it a matter of having dashboards automatically updated? Is it a matter of triggering emails to appropriate people? That's really where you're going to be seeing a lot more value in that modification phase. Now, when you really hit find the diamond in the rough, and you're able to do a deep integration where there's bidirectional data going in and out of iForm Builder. We have customers that are submitting millions and millions of transactions a month through the iForm Builder system, and it's a matter of them being able to query existing backend systems, populate iForm Builder, dynamically assign those records out to the field based on certain criteria. Users are then able to download everything onto their device, collect information in an offline environment. Then when they get back to a connection, submit all those records back up to the server, and then it closes the loop and does some other type of, or post to web services or other backend systems or other dashboarding tools. And it's truly a two-way street in terms of the way that the data is going. So as you dive into the actual form building capacity. That's at the very fundamental foundation or core of iForm Builder. Really keep in mind, how do you march your way up the value chain here? And we have customers that, over the past, I just received a case study recently that over the past 90 days, one customer in the UK was able to realize over 600,000 euro in cost savings simply because of productivity and man hours being put into the field by simply having a few hundred people pounding away on iForm Builder all day, every day in their inspections. So really keep in mind that SAMR is at the foundation, and the more that you're able to march up from an enhancement into the transformational phase, it's really a matter of really getting the most out of your platform. So with that, I will jump off the soapbox, and I want to turn this over to Barrett. And Barrett, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Well, welcome everyone to this Training 101 for the Art and Science of Form Building. Like Ryan mentioned, it's not just replacing that paper, but it's adding more to the data that you're collecting. So today we're going to start by going through the best practices for form building. After that, we'll go through the form building golden rules. If you can imagine, it's like when you're a kid and you learn those golden rules. You want to make sure that you follow those. From there, we'll touch upon the different element types that you have available to you within iForm Builder. And then the second to last step is the building a form and the demo and walkthrough. And lastly, we have a review and closing. So I have a little note here at the bottom that just says open up your iForm Builder account to participate and build a form. I'll be walking through that demo in a relatively slow manner so that if you'd like to participate and build this form as we go through it, feel free. We're going to be starting from scratch, so you'll be able to be at the same pace as myself. From there, like I mentioned, our first topic is the best practices for form building. The first one is to use a naming convention for all forms. So here I have an example with _parent and _child. When I say use a naming convention, this is actually for the data column or the table name for the form. Now, if you're not 100% sure what it is I'm talking about when I'm referring to the table name of a form, we are going to be going through that. But for this example, like I said, the _parent would be that first form that the user would open, and then the _child could be the subform. The second best practice I have here is to have a device handy while you're building a form. The reason for that is as you get used to the platform, you'll notice that when you can add some functionality to your form where an element won't be displayed to the user unless they select a specific option. So to make sure that that functionality is occurring, you want to make sure that you have your device next to you to test to see what that looks like. The third thing here is to clean the local database in the iForm app if something doesn't look right on the form. Now that's also called empty your local database if you're using the Android client. But what I mean by that is sometimes with functionality or sometimes when you add some formatting to your forms, it might not look the way that you think it should look. So just to double check that, you can clean the local database within the iForm app on your device. The next best practice is to test on all device types before going live. The reason for that is depending on if you're using an Android or an iOS device may depend on the functionality of that specific element that you've added to your form. So to make sure that you are creating this form structure that is best for the user, you need to have and be able to view it in every which way that the user may view it. The next one here is open multiple browser windows for convenience. This is especially important once you really start adding functionality to your forms. You'll notice that instead of opening and closing a different tab every time you open a form and you're adding to a subform, it's much easier to have multiple browser windows open. Next, we have add the required fields once the form is complete. Now, this is really a preference for me, and the reason I have this in here is because when you add a required field to a form, as you can imagine, even when you're testing it, it'll ask you or it'll tell you that you can't submit that form unless you've completed those required fields. So like I said, I usually add that. That's the last step that I do for the form building process, just so that when I'm testing the form, I can actually see it and close it and submit the form without having to input data for all those required fields. And then we have just a reminder that there's only the parent form needs to be assigned to the user. So once you're building these forms, you'll notice that in your iForm account on your device, you'll notice that you have a form folder, or a form folder for each form that you've created. So unless you unassign your subforms, they will always show up on your device. And that goes along with this, which is to only the parent form needs to be assigned. So you'll want to unassign the subform to yourself and only assign the parent form to the users. And the last step here is follow the iForm Builder golden rules. Before I go any further, Ryan, are there any questions on that, on the best practices?
Sorry, Barry. Yes, we're good to go. Continue going. Questions are coming in, but we're good to go.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Continuing with best practices, I have a list of form building decisions. The first one is, what devices will the end users be using? Again, noting that the Android and the iOS functionality is slightly different with element types. What naming convention do I use for this forms and for the option list? Again, it is important to have the naming convention, not only because in the form builder, you'll notice that all the forms are alphabetical, so you want to be able to locate the child form or the subform and the parent form in the same go. But also with the option list, you want to make sure you're able to identify what that option list was developed for. So to be able to identify that option list was specifically made for this form, or maybe it's a generic option list like a yes, no, or non-applicable. You wouldn't necessarily need the naming convention for that type. The third here is, how should I structure the form? Are there going to be subforms, or where can I split up my form into different subforms? A lot of times that first step, like Ryan mentioned, it's just replacing that paper form. So that there are times where you may have a paper form that's maybe 10 pages and you don't necessarily know how to break up the structure, and instead of having 10 pages over 100 different questions on just one form, you're able to add these subforms, but making sure that there's a cohesiveness to the way that your form is built and the amount of subforms that you have. Next, we have, what element input types should I use for each question? This is specifically important to think about with option lists. We have 3 different types of option lists to know which type would be best for the kind of question that you're asking, as well as if you should have either a text area or just a text input type, depending on how much text you'd like to give the user, and so forth. And the last one here is, where can I add form functionality? So the smart controls or whatnot to cut down on human error. So the reason for using a form builder, the whole form builder platform, is to help with this data collection, and a huge part of that is to cut down on that human error. And the idea of using smart controls as well as the smart table search, these are really amazing aspects of the form builder platform, and I'll be touching upon it slightly today, but more so in our next training session, which is a month from our training sessions are always the last Wednesday of every month. So in our August training session, that's how to build smart forms, and we'll really go in deeper with how to build a form with smart controls as well as other aspects. Following the decisions that we talked about, as well as some of those best practices, we did touch upon the use of subforms. The reason for that is, as I stated here, it's better to break up a form into subforms rather than using a very long form. Not only is it better for the user to be able to see where they are on the form, but it's also better for your data collection and for the way that the form is downloaded to the device. Here I have just some of these suggestions. These are all for iOS devices, but these, this hasn't really been tested. It's just recommended guideline to try to help you cut down on adding, hundreds and hundreds of different elements within your form. The other thing to think about is we do have elements within iForm Builder that do take up more space, as you can imagine. The drawing element, or the photos, or even the audio recordings, those are going to take up more space on your device than using just a text area. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're building out your forms as well. One thing I mentioned with those best practices is to build for that device type. After this session, I'll be able to share all these screens with you, or if you want to go to the Customer Success Center and just look up the differences between the different features between iOS and Android devices, and you'll have a list of what can be used within the Android client and what can be used in the iOS client. But as I say here, best practices to always build for the device type. If you do have users that will be accessing the form via the Android and the iOS, then it's very important that you look at those features to make sure that the form that you're building is functioning the same way in both types of devices. The second thing on this page is to always build for the smallest device. That being said, one type of predicament people usually find themselves in when they're new to Form Builder is they'll use the select option list, which basically what it looks like, and as you can see in these little images here in that Android, there are two different buttons there. Now, if you were to use a select and you had a large amount of text, it may look fine in your tablet and your iPad, but then when you look on your phone, it might be all scrunched together, or it might not be legible. So that's why it's important to build for that smallest device, test and look at what it looks like on the smallest device to make sure that it's still legible and it's easily accessible to the user. Before I go into the form building golden rules, how we doing, Ryan?
Barrett, we're doing great. We can continue on.
All right, thank you. All right, so these golden rules, like I said, when you were a child, you probably heard be on to treat others like you'd like to be treated. These aren't exactly the same or nearly as important, but as far as form building goes, they will save your life. Well, maybe not life, but save your iForm Builder life or save your form. The first one, which you've heard me say probably numerous times on this training already, which is test before going live. Again, test before going live, test, just because you never know what you may think you just created the simplest form and you just need to deploy it out to the field to have users collect data, and you could run into huge issues if you don't test. The second is unique data column names that are database friendly. So if you're trying to create a form and you want to call it location, now that's a great term for the user to see, but as far as what is database friendly, the term location is not database friendly. So you would have to uncheck the box, and I'm going to go through this when I open up my form builder, but uncheck a box and then say that you want to change it so that it's not, the data column name and the label are not the same. So there's an easy way to fix that. And again, I'm going to show you in just a few minutes. The third form builder golden rule is to do not change the input type, data size, or encryption for an element on a live form. It will delete the data. What you want to keep in mind with that is changing the input type of an option list is also changing that type of form. So even though you're able, even after the form's been live and people are collecting data, you may decide, okay, I had this as the select option list here, but now I want to have it as a pick list. Changing that is changing the input type, and that would delete the data that was previously collected. So the solution, instead of changing that input type, is to disable that element that was at one time, for our example that I just gave, that select option list. You would check that little disabled box under the input type and then add a new field, form field, for that option list and turn it into a pick list there. By making it disabled, it's no longer collecting any data or doing anything on the background of the device, but it's not erasing the data that you already have for that form. I have a little asterisk on the bottom here that says if the data column name is not friendly, the form will not save. So if you're familiar with Form Builder, you've probably received this error message before. It's a very easy fix. Just refresh your browser window and add the element again. Uncheck the Based on Label box and then change the data column name. All right, now we're just going to jump into the element input types. After we do this, we'll be going into the form builder. So again, if you want to participate and build out this form, be sure to log into your iForm Builder account and get ready for the form. So it's important when you're form building to understand the amount of different element input types that we have. Now this is constantly being updated, so be sure to check back, and as well as check our release notes. Whenever a new element is added, our release notes will include that information. Or if it's been updated, like recently our drawing element was just updated to include a annotation feature, which is amazing, and we're going to look at that in a little bit, but the release notes give more detail on how that works. Like I said, here's just a brief list. This includes some of the integrated software and some of the integrated hardware. So again, knowing what element types and element options you have as you build your form is very beneficial to knowing what would be best for collecting the data. Earlier I did talk about our option list and how there are 3 different types of option lists. This just gives you a visual cue, I guess, of really what that looks like as far as on your device. Here, the first one we have is the select option list. As you can see, I used images here, but this allows you to have this all on the form screen. It doesn't have a pop-up window, as you can see, like the pick list and multi-select do. But my rule of thumb really is if you are going to have more than 3 options, then use a pick list. If it's 3 or less options, then that's where the select option list, it can be very beneficial, especially if you have like a yes, no, non-applicable. That's perfect for the select. Next, we have the pick list. As you can see, the window popped up, and the pick list allows you to have a longer list of options and a longer text, but it only allows the user to select one type of option list, or one of the option types, I'm sorry. And then the final one is the multi-select, and that looks very similar to the pick list, but as you can see, that allows for the user to select more than one option. Underneath there, I have the option list manager, which, again, once I'm walking through the form, you'll be able to see this, but these are 2 areas besides just placing in the options that are available within the option list area, or option list manager. Next, we have the masking. I just wanted to briefly touch upon this. We do not have a masking widget per se, but we have different elements that contain masking. One of them being social security number, another being zip code, and the third being a phone number. Potentially, you may want to add your own masking to an element and not have it be a social security number, zip code, or phone number. For example, I had a group that I was talking to the other day who preferred not to use our date element to record someone's birth date. Instead, they wanted to use masking. So we were able to take the social security number and allow, using the pound sign, we were able to say, instead of using the birth date or the date element, let's use the social security number and have it customized so that the user can only place a numerical value where the pound signs are listed. And after masking, this is just our subform, and the form we're going to build shortly, we'll go through some of these, we'll go through using a form or using subforms, but this is just high level. This is what you're looking at, and this is, again, an example of the naming convention to use. So for this instance, I have Barrett's form _ parent. That's that parent form, the first form that the user opens, and the form that is assigned to the user. Underneath, I have Barrett's form food, which child, Barrett's form travel child, Barrett's form hotel stay child. So those final three are three additional subforms that have been added to that parent form through the smart paging. As you can see underneath there, I have an example of a Excel file or Excel feed that would include what it looks like to have a form and using subforms in the data. Each subform creates its own tab at the bottom. Underneath there, and the last thing on this page, you'll see the differences with the link mode. So you have the option to have a single or multiple or on-page table view versus the separate table view. Again, I just want to cover this so that when we're faced with this option, when we're building our form in a few minutes, you really can identify what it is that I'm referring to. So here we have the separate table view on the left-hand side. What that's implying is that after the subform has been completed by the user, before they go back to that parent form, they'll be brought to a page that'll display that table. Now, if you want the on-form view, the way that works is after the user completes a record, then they'll be brought back to that parent form, and they'll see that table on that parent form. So that's the example on the right side. All right, so here are the form fields that we're going to add to and basically create a form in Form Builder with these different form fields. This is just off of a paper form that I'd seen, and so this is nothing I've created before, so we're going to be doing it together. And we'll just go through the best practice of doing that. Before I continue, Ryan, is there any questions?
Yeah, so Barrett, when you do go into the form builder itself, there's been a couple questions around key values and the difference between label and key value in the option list manager and how that gets displayed on data views or data feeds. So if we just address that and, if necessary, talk through what those options are.
Sure, definitely. Thank you. I'm going to wait until we add an option list to our form to go through that question, but thank you, Ryan, for bringing that up. So if you have your form builder open, yours will look somewhat similar. I have a dedicated database for the training content, and that's why it says iForm Builder Training. But the first thing I'd like you to do is to create a new form. So for this instance, I'm going to just call it Demo July Form. And underneath that, the form label is what the user will see on the device. Underneath that, we have our underneath that we have our table name, and that's where you want to use that naming convention that we talked about earlier. So using the underscore parent. Potentially, you may have a form where it doesn't have a subform, and if that may be the case for a lot of your forms. But what I find is I always end it with parent, just so that I can identify that this is a starting point. So if I add another form later on, I'll just add underscore child to that table name. I did uncheck the based on label, as you can see, so that again, the label is what the user will see, and they don't need to see the naming convention parent. That's just for me. Underneath that, you have the area for the description. This is great if you have a lot of form builders within your company and you want to make sure that everyone's on the same page on what that form was created for. So for this instance, I'll say this form is created to be a part of training. Underneath the description, we have our form icon. Now, these are all icons that are just a part of Form Builder, but there may be a time that you don't want to use one of the form icons supplied here. So what I've done is I've already Google searched an icon that I want to use for my form instead, and this building with a check mark, I think that looks fantastic, so I'm going to go and click View Image, and I'm going to copy that and place that in my URL for the form icon. Now what that's doing is, as you can imagine, when I open the form on my device, I'll have a different image, or I'll have this healthy building inspection image, instead of having one of the default icons. Now, before I go any further, as you can see, I do have about 5 different windows open for iForm Builder. So like I mentioned to you earlier today, having these different web browser tabs will be very beneficial as you start to add some functionality. So under the URL for the form icon, I have the reference ID section. Now these reference IDs are for the entire form, and I would love to go into more detail on what these do, but with today's training session, I'll just touch upon 2 of these here, and during our next month's training session, we'll go into a little bit more detail. So the reference ID 2, that is the way that I think about that is reference ID 2 is all about the view. So what you're able to do is you're able to identify what forms or what form fields you want displayed in the table of a specific record or on the device. So for instance, if I had that separate table view for a subform, then I can choose what I want displayed in that table. Reference ID 4 is to override the user's settings, so either record no delete on upload or record delete on upload. Again, that's just a very high level overview of what that does, and we have more detail on our help desk as well as in our next training session. Underneath the reference ID section, we have the label icons URL. So in those images I showed you earlier where I had some images in my form, I had placed a label icons URL linking to my Dropbox account. That being said, if you haven't yet, I would suggest going and configuring your Dropbox, your media configuration, either Dropbox or Box, whatever it is that you want to do, or if you want to host any images to be brought into your forms, you'll want to link that up under the Company tab. And lastly, on our Edit Form Properties page, this is our page level JavaScript. So if you were to place page level JavaScript here, it would be, what it's doing is it's applying to any fields within your form that you call to. If you're not familiar with JavaScript at all, then I may have completely confused you, but if you are familiar with JavaScript, then essentially what you're doing is you're creating functionality and creating variables for other elements within the form, especially if it calls for a larger amount of JavaScript. All right, now that was a whirlwind, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save changes. Again, just before I go on, you do have the option to delete a form. So if you find that you created this form today and you don't necessarily want to keep it around, then after today's session, you may want to delete the form. All right, now that I've saved the changes, I have my form open and I can add a new input. So here I've just pressed add new input and it defaults to a text element. Oopsies, sorry about that. I want to make sure that our first form field here, in our example, it says full name. Now for best practices and for best data collection, I strongly suggest separating the first name and last name. So here in my comment, I have the label and my data column name. And in the label, I'm going to place first name. And I'm going to keep this as a text area. Now that I have the first name, I'm actually going to duplicate that input and change the label to last name. Again, my paper form called for full name, but I'm just going to break it up into the first and last name. In this comment section where I placed the label, the data column name is right underneath that, and that's where I said the data column names do need to be database friendly. And if they weren't, you could uncheck the based on label, and that's where you could change the data column name. So for instance, here I have last name, I can do underscore of user. The data column name is also what you'll see in, as you can imagine, in the data. So this is where, if you're looking at a feed, it is important to make sure that your data column name does make sense and it's not just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. This is also what you'll use when you become a little bit more advanced, or if you already are advanced in form building, then the data column name is what you'll use in the smart controls. All right, now that I've had my first two fields, the next field that I want in this form is today's date. So I'm going to add a new input. Just to let you know as well, if you wanted to add an input not at the bottom of the field, or wherever you want to add an element, you want to make sure you're highlighting the field above where you want that element to be placed. So here I have last name, and I'm just going to select add new input, and I'll just write date. Again, date's probably not going to be database friendly, so I want to uncheck the based on label and write today's date. Now, this is the first time in our form that we've actually changed the element input type, so we're going to go down to the input properties right below common. We're going to select the date. If you want to have it as the date and time, that is an option as well. As you can see, as I hover over some of these different options, it does give you a little bit more information. So as you're building forms, if you find an element that you're not quite sure what it is, again, hovering over it will change that. Now that we're in the input properties, as you'll see, you also have the option for encryption, disabled, and required. Again, I said to you earlier that I usually add the required section to the form after I've completed it and I've tested my form to make sure it has the functionality that I want. The required does tell you or make the users complete those fields before they can move on or before they can submit that record. This disable checkbox, this is where I was referring to earlier, where you can disable an element if it's no longer in use or if you want to change the element input type. All right, before I continue, I'm going to just save my form. And then the next element I'm going to add is the email. So my label, I'm going to have email address. And I'm going to keep that as the based on label. That's fine. That's a database friendly term. Underneath that, in the input type, I'm going to select email. As you can see, a new option is shown where it says send email. So potentially I can have this report, once it's completed, it can be sent to the user's email address. If you're using an iOS device, you're able to actually add the endings of the email for using the option list. So here, let's see, I have already created an option list that included Gmail and Yahoo.com. And maybe I'm going to add the XerionSoftware.com. If I didn't already have this list, I would first press the plus button, and then I would add and then by adding the plus button, and actually I'll just go ahead and do that now, it creates a new option list up top, and I'm going to change that name to email list, and this is where I'll do gmail.com, yahoo.com, and XerionSoftware.com. Once I've created this list, I want to make sure that I save my list, and if I scroll down in my option list, I see the email list, which is what I just created. Now I need to make sure that I assign that list to the element as well. Before moving on, going back to the question that was asked earlier about the advanced settings within your option list. So by going into the advanced, as you can see, you have the label and you have the key value. Here, my label and my key value are the same because I don't have any spaces. Now, if I did have spaces, like maybe it was Gmail, or maybe if you have a sentence saying favorite color is blue. So in between each of those words, it would be an underscore, same like what you see with the data column names. if that's not what you want displayed within a field, or if you wanted to have it so that the user has access to that later, the option list always calls to the key value, but maybe you want it to display the label instead. You would use a built-in function called ZZ display value, and you would add a new element underneath this form to show that. That is more of a more smart form, and it's going to be addressed in our next session, but I'd be happy to send you the link or send the information along to whoever that was that had that question about the key value and how to have the label be displayed instead. As I said earlier, this is the advanced section of our option list manager. You also have this area for the condition value. This is great if you're building out a smart option list, which would basically allow you to call to different option lists to only display specific fields based off of the user's input in another option list. Again, that's more into that smart controls, and so we'll be going more into detail in a month with that. Underneath that, you have the icons URL. This gives you a pretty good indication on how to do that process. So if you have any questions, again, our Customer Success Center can help you with that, and so can I. All right, so now that we've created the email address and we've assigned our option list, or I should have, email list, assign list to element. There we go. Now we see that my options are being displayed here within the option list tab. The next section we have underneath that is the university building inspection. Now, as somebody who just, maybe this is a paper form that I've been using for years, the first thing I noticed that this section, you could be going into multiple buildings on any specific day. So this whole section I'm going to want to create into a subform. Essentially what you have to do by creating it into a subform is building a brand new form. So here I've started where I've copied the parent form name that I had for the table name, again using the naming, oops, let me just show you, using our naming convention. So if I go back to my parent form, I have demo July form parent, and now in this subform that I'm creating, I have demo July form inspection child. So the inspection, I've placed that in there because that's referring to this specific form. So this is going to be building inspection. And for this instant, I'm just going to take one of our icons that we already have within iForm Builder and use that for this form. All right, now that I've created this subform, I need to add the elements to this form. So here our first element says location of building, which is campus. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the label location, or maybe I'll just keep it as campus location. This is definitely going to be another option list. Maybe I have just 5 different types or 4 different types. So here I'll use a pick list. And again, I want to use a pick list here because it is more than 3, and the multi-select would allow the user to select more than one option, and that's not necessarily what I want to happen. So now that I've selected the input type, I want to go down to my option list, open up my option list manager, and create a new option list. This option list, I'm going to name it campus location. And maybe I'm just going to, for this example, I'm going to do north, south, west, and east. Now that I've placed the different campus locations, I'm sure there's more creative and better names out there, but for this example, I'm just going to use those 4. After I've added those options, I need to save the list. Then I need to find the list within my option list manager, campus location, and then assign the list to the element. So now I see those options have been assigned to this element. Next, I have building name and building number. So building name. For this, I'm going to keep this as a text area. If I had more time, what I would do is I would create this as a pick list as well and do a smart option list. So based off of the user's selection in the campus location, maybe they select north, then I would only show the building names that are in north. I would do the same thing for, that would continue down, and underneath I would have my next area, which would be the building number. Again, if I had more time, I would add the functionality and create it so that if the user selected north and then the north buildings would be displayed in a pick list that follows, then I would have only the building numbers for the north building names that were given. So again, creating that smart option list to cut down on human error and to cut down on the user input. But for today, I am just going to use a number field. I'm going to save my form. And I have 3 more fields that I need to add to this form. The reason for inspection is their need for a follow-up this week and the photos of a building. So I'm going to add a new input, and this one's going to be called the reason for inspection. And most likely this is going to be a longer text area for the user, so I want to make sure they have all the space that they need. And underneath that we have is their need for follow-up. So I'm back at that label and I said, is their need for a follow-up? And for this, I'm going to use a select option list. Again, because I'm going to have, it's either yes or it's no, then it'll be displayed on the form. So I go down to my option list, open my option list manager, and open up my yes or no option list that I've already created and assign the list to the element. Now the last field that we have for this form is photos of building. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a subform. I already have a subform created that's for photos, and it says photo caption, just photo, or photo with annotation, and photo audio note. So this is a form that I've already created that I'm going to attach to this as a subform. So photos of building. I'm going to go down into my input type and select subform. Now that I've selected subform, I want to go down to smart paging. In the smart paging, all the forms that have been created in this profile are being displayed to me. And I want to select the form titled photo. Here I have it as photo child. Earlier I mentioned to you that you have 2 different options as far as the link modes. You have single and multiple. I'm going to select multiple because I want to allow my user to create or take as many pictures as they need to document this whole process. If I only wanted them to take 1 picture, then I would select the single. Next, it gives me the option for the separate table view, like I described earlier. This would give you a table of all the records for that specific subform, and then the user would have to go back to that other, to the other form. Here, I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to save my form and go back to my parent form. Again, this is where it's extremely helpful for me to have the different tabs open in my browser. So as you can see, before we could add the building inspection subform, we first had to create it. So now that it's been created, I want to add it to my form, but I don't want to just add it to my form. I want to make sure that this first form still is usable and still looks good. So I'm going to add a divider in between to break up the content for the user. As you can see, I used, as far as the common goes, the label, I used div1. That's usually what I start with, and then if I add any more dividers, I just duplicate that input type on my form, and it'll automatically go to div 2, as you can see here. Okay, so I've put in the divider, and I want to add a subform right under this divider. So I'm going to add my new input, and I'm just going to call this building inspection. I'm going to select go into my smart paging again, go into my input properties, select subform, go into my smart paging, and I should see here I have, I actually don't see that form that I just created, and that's probably because I forgot to reload my window. So I'm just going to select any old form at this time and press save, and then refresh my window, log in, and open my demo form again. So demo July form parent, and as you can see right next to it is demo July form inspection child, that subform that we had created. I'm going to load this form, and where I have my building inspection subform, I'm going to go back into smart paging and now select that child form that wasn't displayed to me earlier. Again, I want to make this a multiple to allow the user to go into multiple buildings on this day. I'm going to save my form. And we do have some, I'm going to add one more element. I know we're getting close to the end here, but I'm going to add one more element for as far as functionality within my form. This is going to be an assign to. So I'm going to say assign record to. And so this is going to, essentially what this will do is once this form has been completed and synced to the cloud, I'll have a list, whoever I've assigned from the Form Builder account, whatever username I've assigned it to, they'll now be able to download the record as well. So I am saving my form. And if you want to bear with me, I'm going to bring up my device and show you what our form should look like. And Ryan, while I'm getting this to show, if there are any questions, just feel free.
Sure. There's been actually quite a few questions coming in and filtering through. We had a question about the background color for option lists. So can you designate if on a select widget you select yes or no or pass or fail, one turns green or red? We currently do not have that functionality. However, it is something that's been discussed and talked about. We also had a question in terms of people asking for list of all the elements that are included in the platform, as well as with Manatee and the barcode scanning, how do you parse out different information that was sent back? So all of those details will be, they should have been made public. If not, they will be included in the final report that gets emailed out to everybody tomorrow morning.
Well, great. Sounds like you handled all that. So the form that we just created called the Demo July form, as you can see that we have our icon here. And I'm using Reflector app to show you this right now. What we had, the form fields we had was first name. We had that as a text area. I'm just going to put my information in here. We then have date. So this is what the element will look like on your form. You can just select today and place that there. We have our email address. So as you recall, we did add option list to this. If you're using the Android client currently, the domain list is not in the email, but it will be coming soon. So keep your eye open for that information. All right, now I'm just going to type in some mumbo jumbo there, and that's the first half of our form. Next, underneath, we have our building inspection. This is our subform. So we have our campus location, north, and the building name and building number. We have our building name and then building number. So as you can see, I'm trying to input some alpha in this specific area, but because this is required to be a number, then I need to, as you can see, it forces me to put that number in. Reason for inspection, that's our text area. And then we have, is there a need for a follow-up, yes or no? And then the photos of building. As you can see, we have the photo caption, which of course is just text, just photo. So I'll take a picture of the room that I'm in right now. It's really exciting, so we'll use that. And then we also have the or photo with annotation. So this is a drawing element that allows you to add annotation to the form. So below you can see you can either take a picture or bring in a picture from your device. So here it says this app does not have access to your photos or videos. So if you are planning on allowing the user to use pictures that they already have, make sure that they've updated their privacy settings. Again, wonderful picture of the office, and I'll use that. I can use it as a background image or as a floating image. I'm going to first put it as a background image, and then I'm going to take another picture and place it as a floating image. And you'll be able to see kind of what that means. So I'm going to use that as a floating image and make it smaller. So as you can see, you're allowing the user to take more than one picture and to focus in on certain areas if need be. You can draw and point to different areas, as well as add some icons to your form. Now this is a horrible picture, but hopefully you get the idea of what it can do. You also have the text area and different shapes and whatnot. So I'm going to place done. I have the photo for the audio notes if I want to, and then at the bottom of the form it does say done, and I'm brought back to that subform. Now if I want to have more images, I would do the photos of building. I would just press that again. That's the way that we've set up the subforms to allow for that multi-linking. Same thing goes for this parent form with the multi-linking. We have only one record here, but if I was going into multiple, that I could create more of those. Underneath, I have the assign record to. This form has only been assigned to me, so it only has my username there. But if there were more individuals who had access to this form within the account, then they would all the names would be listed here. All right, well, hopefully some of you were able to create this form as well, or create at least some of the functionality, and that you're able to see the different options that you have available to you. Again, this is not just to show you the options that are available, but also how to best put in those different elements to create the better functionality for the user. One other thing is before I lose any more of you, or lose any of you, hopefully no one has left yet, but I understand if you've had to. The next thing is our next session will go through some of these smart controls and adding functionality. So I just went through the form that we just created, and I placed in some areas that I would add functionality for this form, including smart option list, using built-in functions, and so on for this. All right, before we close, our next session is August 27th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to be the Form Builder 102, so the Building Smart Forms. If you want to view our other recorded sessions, we do have that in our iForm Builder Academy, and as well as information on the training courses, our Kickstart program, but also our implementation support. Ryan and I are happy to answer those questions for you at any point, so please contact us. And Ryan, the floor is yours.
No, that's great. And with that, I think we're going to end the training. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, all of our contact details are located in the chat feature. And within 24 hours, you're going to be receiving an email with the recording as well as all supporting documentation. And we'll be more than happy to follow up if there's any questions, comments, or concerns from there as well. So with that, I'm going to end the webinar. Thank you so much for joining and taking some time out of your afternoon. Take care.